So I thought I'd just record as quick as I can run through of all the menu and UI features of Morphin. So let us playing so you can see what you can do. It's all pretty cool. So starting from the start, we have the top bar. So we have the file menu, the add menu, the outliner, the lighting and world settings, post-processing, and settings. So the file menu. So new open save as should be pretty self-explanatory. Import and export. So import is where you can choose to bring in GLBs as well as I think FBXs. And export is where you can either export a GLB or interestingly, you can also export video. So if you go to video, the interface will hide itself. You can hit play. You can sort of frame this up as you want. And then we're going to tap the record button down here in the corner. Move that silly thing over to that side. So when I tap this button here, that'll start recording. You can even keep moving the view if you want while that's going on. And then when I stop it, it'll ask me where to save it to. I'll save it to my, that's now saved to my photo gallery. So that's the file menu. The add menu. So this is primarily of these things up here. These are primarily like gizmos to help with rigging. So say these handles down here, these square boxes for the feet, they are one of these guys here that gets made automatically by the constraint system that I'll talk about later. You've got arrows and handles and this, that, and the other. You can bring in images and video as backdrops. You can bring in a default biped skeleton, which matches up to the Mixamo skeleton, which is quite useful if you're going to be using that. And then down here, we've got a backdrop, a camera, and a light. So if I bring in a backdrop, that is like a cyc, like you'd see in a photographic studio, like that kind of thing. You can change its color and properties, which I'll get to shortly. You can add cameras and lights, and of the light types, you have directional points and spotlights. So at the moment in this scene, I've got a spotlight from the top, and I've got a directional light here to give them a bit of fill light as well. And the rig will make an empty rig ready for you to make bones, which again I will talk about later. That's add. Now to the outliner. So the outliner is the overview of your scene. So you can see here, that's my directional light, that's my spotlight, that's the backdrop. And over here is my full character rig. So here are all the bones, all the parenting structure, that's all there. Next to every item in the outliner, you have these various icons across here. Again, these are pretty self-explanatory. So the eye is the visibility state for things. You can delete things, you can rename things. I'll call this key light. And then if they have extra properties, usually you can get to them from here. So for lights, if I click on this icon, I can bring up the light properties. So I can change the intensity, I can change the color, the angle, the softness, whether it casts shadows or not, and the color of this light. So make it a lovely blue and make it brighter. Obviously, these values can go as high as you need them to within limits. For the backdrop, that will often do shading properties. So I can go into here, and so I can have it be smooth opacited. I can have it not react to light at all. I can be a wireframe, cast and receive shadows, and I can change the color here as well. And if you scroll further down, you've got different properties for the roughness as well, which is quite useful. So turn the metalness down, turn the roughness up, so it's just a diffuse surface. I've also got this new thing for light emitters. So if you want to have cards which are used generally to light metallic surfaces like cars and things, the light emitter thing property is quite useful. That is the backdrop. So the outliner. The one last thing to say is for certain operations, you have to select a mesh while you're doing something else. To do that, you do that from here. So if I put a checkbox there, now this will be the mesh which is targeted when I go to do some bone and rigging operations over here, but we'll get to that shortly. That is the outliner. Here are the overall sort of lighting and world options. So this is the color of the backdrop. You can see over on the side there, if I get this like this, you can see that's the color of the backdrop, which I can change the hue as well. I can change the overall scene brightness. I should say as well that most of these menus can now be pinned. So if you need to keep the outline up permanently while you're doing work, that'll stay there while I choose other things. Turn that off. Go back to this one. So you can change the overall scene exposure. You can turn shadows off globally, off and on. The catcher size is the shadow quality. I generally don't apply that much, but probably if I turn this down, that 100 is as low as it goes. So those shadows actually look pretty good. You can tell it to turn on ambient lights. I tend to have that turned off. And you've got settings for the HDR environment. So I can boost this up. I can rotate the lights. Sorry, I got to show it. And make sure that my exposure is turned down a bit. Whoops. And I can rotate this around. I can not see that for some reason. That should be rotating in the background there. Whoops. Strange. It's probably something I'm doing. Anyway, that's those settings. Post-processing. So this has a few quite useful things. So you can turn on post-processing. It'll warn you that it'll flash, and then you can play with brightness and contrast and hue. Generally speaking, you can't push these things too hard. So you can do like little corrections, but if you go like really crazy with, say, the saturation, you'll start to get some issues and sort of solarizing itself. But it's good just to sort of overall boost up the quality. Turn the saturation back down to something kind of normal, hue and then contrast back to 0. 0 there, please. Yep, cool. And the brightness back down as well. Cool. You can turn on vignettes and this very nice toon shader actually, and pixelation and noise. So there's quite a lot of features built in. Great to work with the video export. I'll turn all that off again and turn off post-processing. Cool. So that's that. And then lastly, we have settings. So I will use this every now and then, although I'm using it less because there's other things turned on. So hopefully these all make sense. So show UI, show the scene info, which is this heads up display there. Pencil gestures will normally automatically turn on as soon as you touch a pencil to the screen. The gesture indicator is for exactly the kind of thing I'm doing now, where it'll put a cursor where my pencil is. But I'm going to turn it off. The infinite grids, auto turntable with a speed control. Advanced gestures, this is quite handy. So I tend to have it so that only my pencil can move, can sort of touch and interact with things, but only my fingers can move the camera. So that if I sort of drag out an empty space, you turn the gesture back on. So if I drag out here, I can't accidentally nudge stuff, but if I use my finger, then I can move things. I find this setup quite useful. What else do we need to know here? Camera options and gizmo options. I'm using these less and less. The defaults are pretty good. So that's the top bar. How much time are we doing? 8 minutes. Okay, got to go faster. The left bar. So that's all these ones over here. So this one gets you in and out of pose mode for a character. I'm going to turn off the gesture thing again because I find just for myself, I find it a little bit confusing. And let me turn up the rig opacity a little bit more. Okay, so this mode gets you in and out of skeleton edit mode or skeleton manipulation mode. It's pose mode in Blender, I think it's called. Marquee select lets you choose multiple bones. You, just make sure that that's turned off. It tends to make a lot of operations in Morphin disabled. So if you find you can't do things, you can't edit things, check if you've got the marquee turned on. This button here will bring up morph targets if your character has them. Let me just save this for a second. I'll show you a character that has that. Save as draw anim UI demo. Like that. Cool. So I'm going to go open, and I'm going to open a character that has morph targets like this guy. Sure. So if I choose his skin and then I go to that menu, you see all the sliders, and I can pin that and I can slide through and see what's going on. So I can play and I can see his animation there. So that's quite useful. Go back to my other scene for the demo. Open, yep, and yep. I'll turn off this backdrop actually because I don't need it. Cool. and set the background to something less lurid. Lovely. Okay, back to here. I'm going to choose the skeleton. There we are. Okay, so that was layers. Weight painting is the next one. So this paintbrush icon. So if you find, sorry, if you find that you need to adjust the weights of a character, that's what this button is for. So if I decided that I wanted to adjust the weight of the head and neck, for example, choose the bone that you want to modify, and then click a button, and you get this weight paint preview. I tend to not use replace, I tend to use add at a low value, so I can just like sort of gradually increase the amount of weight on regions. Within here, you can choose to add or to erase. I tend to only ever add. You can undo strokes in here, so I can press the undo button down here, or I can use Command Z on my Apple keyboard. So that should undo the weight painting, or I can redo it. When you have the weights as you like, you can hit apply, this button here, and then you can exit out. I'm going to jump back into that mode for a sec to explain the rest of it. You can also do gradients, which is quite useful for certain things. So if I choose this button here, this is a linear gradient, so I can just paint. So this is using the weight value here for the gradients. If I turn that up all the way, now I can draw gradients like that. So it's good to get very sort of quick weight painting down. You can also do circular gradients with this button here. So I can just click and drag and I get a sphere of influence. Very, very useful. Masking, I can't remember how to use that actually. I don't think I use it much. I tend to go very simple and straight with my weight painting. Obviously these other brushes here. So this is the size of the brush. So you can go a really big brush if you need to. And these are the operations down here. So replace, add, subtract, and sample. I tend to only ever use add. Live update is quite useful where, let me just exit and then jump back in again, where if the character is in a pose, as you change the weights, normally you would have to hit apply to see it actually have an effect. Let's see if I can do something more extreme, maybe on the tail. So I'm going to exit out, I'm going to grab the tail and see if I can bend it. Oh, it's got constraints on it. Let's turn that off for a sec. Can I do that? No, okay, that's fine. Turn that off again. I'll bend his leg up a bit higher. So let's say I want to, I notice something strange, like say there, that's a good one. So you can see that this knee looks a bit strange and I want to try and fix the weights there. If I choose that bone, go into weight painting, and if I turn on live update, as I change the weights, you'll see it update live. So I'm going to add a small amount of weight, and so I can like add this, and you see these things update straight away. Which is quite useful. So I'll go that and go apply and exit. Cool. I'll put his foot back down. There we are. Sorry, Mr. T-Rex. No, I'll turn his foot upside down. Let's get that correct. That's better. Cool. Okay, that's weight painting. This next button just hides and shows the gizmo. This one hides and shows the ground plane. This one changes between perspective and orthographic mode, quite useful. And of course, undo and redo there. That's that menu. Go to the right bar. So this is primarily to do with rigging on this side over here. Let me turn off the background because I don't want that. Show it, no, excellent. Okay, so rigging. So the first button is preferences for the rig display. So you can choose different kinds of shape modes for the bones. I tend to stick with Octa. The display, you can change the colors of the bones when they're active or not active. You can change the overall opacity. You can choose to show bone labels. You can choose to hide or show leaf bones. I tend to not use that. Quite useful one is this one, just to hide everything. So if you just want to preview your motion without the bones getting in the way, you can turn it on and then disable it again to get back into editing. When you are making a rig generally, let me just go back to a new file for a sec. It's probably easy to see on a new setup. Okay, so generally speaking, you would go to the add menu and go add rig, and it will make you a single bone. This button makes a new bone at the origin of the rig. So if I move this guy and then I click the plus button, I make another bone at the origin. And these are just all sitting separately, so they're not parented together. The next bone, the two bones that are joined, that will make a child of the current bone. Let's turn the opacity up a bit. So I go to this one and I click this button, it makes a child of that bone. So I can keep making it a chain like that. So turn that color up a bit. That's better. Another thing to keep in mind is rigging here is similar to Blender, where if you want to make, say, a branching structure, so say I want to treat this as the hips, and then I'm going to make two legs, I can make a child of that bone, and then I can drag it off to one side, turn it around, and I go, Bigfoot, and that's my parenting structure. So if I go back to that one, you can see that's done like that. Constraints I will get back to in a sec. Split will split the current bone. So say I want to have this bone split into sections, I can go split, and I'm going to say split by one. We'll put one extra bone in the middle. If I want to choose that bone and go split into, say, 4 sections, then it's made me 4 sections. Clone will mirror bones, or clone will copy bones, and you can also mirror bones. So if I go clone, and usually what I'll do is, this is mirroring left to right, I'll clone the hierarchy, and I'm going to clone it across X and go clone. And it asks me for a suffix, and I go sure. And now that's made me a copy of the bone chain mirrored to the other side. That's quite useful. Delete, obviously, it will delete bones. Let's delete the hierarchy. The bind menu. So let's go back to what? Let's go back to a single character, and I'm going to put a simple rig inside it quickly. Should I do that quickly? Or is that just too much effort to show in this quick overview? I've got other videos about that. The idea is that, let me get back to this guy actually. Open. Okay. So the idea is, I'm going to delete the backdrop again, go away, and set the background color to be less in my face. All right. So the idea is you would choose your mesh. So you make sure it's got the tick next to it. Then you choose your any part of your skeleton of your hierarchy, and you press the bind button. It brings up all these options. I just always leave them at their defaults, and you can press auto weights, which should bind the character to the skeleton and usually does a pretty good job. If you want to be very specific about it, and you know that this mesh should be completely belonging to a certain bone, you can choose the bone, and then you go weight all to current bone, and then press bind. If you want to detach the skin, you can press unbind, but that will keep the information about the rigging, so that when you press bind again, it doesn't have to re-rig it, it just reattaches the weights, which can be quite useful. If you want to clean it, you press the clean skin data. I'll cover that more in another video. So that's bind. Parent is, you can also choose an object up here, put a tick next to it, choose a bone, and then you can press parent, and that will then parent. Actually, no, you do it all from in here. So you define the parent, and then you go choose something else and define that as the child. So that'll parent bone 5 under bone 4. You can choose to keep the offset, and you can apply or unapply. Scrolling down, because there's more menus here. Bake will bake the current state of the mesh into a separate mesh. So if I get to a pose I like, and then I want to say take that out to another app, I can hit bake, and now I've got a copy of that mesh, which is now baked in that state, which I can then export out. I'm going to delete that guy. Yep. Back to the skeleton. That's bake. This one, yes, onion skin. I tend to not use it, but this will show me copies of the mesh in time. I found it a little unreliable at the moment, so I'm not using it. This makes you a mesh in the scene, so I'm just going to delete that like that. Cool. Back to the skeleton again, pose mode. And then finally, the pose button is very useful. So this will return the skeleton to how it was when you bound. So if I press that button, he goes back to his default state, which is quite useful. How are we doing for time? 20 minutes. Okay, not too bad. That's all that. On to the bottom bar. So we have the advanced menu. So here you can say what kind of key. Hang on, I've missed a thing. I've missed the constraints. So constraints are one of the newer features in Morphin, and it's really awesome. So the idea is, if I bring it up, you have all these different kinds of constraints. So we've got IK, look at, position, rotation, spring, and path. So far, I'm mainly using IK. The operation for most is usually quite similar. So you pick the target bone to work with and do some stuff. So here in this case for IK, again, I'll cover this more in different videos. I chose this bone, which I sort of kept specially aside to be the bone for IK. Why can't I choose you? Sometimes selection is a little bit finicky in Morphin, and it's just being a bit of a jerk. I'm just going to go walk down to the bone I want. So it's going to be that one. Yep. So you choose the bone, which is going to be the end of the IK, and you press the plus next to it so that as it there. You can also choose another bone to use as the poll target, or to make a poll target from, or you can choose auto create and link poll as I normally do, and you press apply and it will make the rig for you. Similarly, if you, for most of these other ones, you go, what is the source, what is the target? So if I wanted, let's see, I'm going to make, no, I'm not going to do it because I've got to keep this quick. So you choose, what is the thing to look at, and then it'll then apply something else. So let's say this is the thing that I want it to look at. This is the bone that I want it to look at for some reason. And so it's the current selection will appear down here. This will get saved, and then you hit apply, and then that'll set up that constraint. Some of these have more options. So for spring, as well as you choose the base of the thing that you want to be springy. Let's see which of these doesn't have a spring on it. All have springs. So this has a spring. Anyway, I chose the neck, went to constraints, said that's where I want the spring to start. You choose some properties. You have gravity as well, which is quite useful, and then you press apply, and that will set up the spring constraints. If you want to temporarily disable the constraints, you can press this pause all up here. And so now if I move, you can see that it's just showing me what I'm actually animating, which is only the hips. But if I turn it back on again, everything gets locked down. So that's all pretty cool. Right, where was I? Advanced. So keyframe mode. This is what kind of keys will be set when I press the keyframe button down here, which we'll get to shortly. This section shows the current values for the current bone. Can I pin this and see it live? Yes, I can. So that's really handy. You can also type in values here if you need to. Then we have this choice between general and bake. So general are these options here. Auto keyframe means that if I set a different value as I'm rotating things, it will just automatically set a key there. So if I turn on auto keyframe and just move, that's now set a key there. So you can see that pops. So I'm going to undo that by pressing undo. Cool. Normally you would rotate the bone and then you would press the keyframe button down here. If I don't press it and change time, it just snaps back to what the value was before. And then batch edits, sorry, snap, I got to read what I'm looking at. So that's auto keyframe. Snap to integer means as I'm scrubbing the timeline, it's snapping to the values, to the closest value that I can see. So if you watch the frame ticker here, you can see this is going by fives because this is the smallest amount that it can snap to with this current zoom on the timeline. I find Morphin actually seems to prefer to have that turned off. So if I have it turned off, you can see that plays very, very smoothly. So yeah, it's useful when you're first kind of blocking in your keys. I tend to turn it off pretty early. Play animation, I think that's for controlling which of the layers will play. I've only got one layer, so they're all playing at once. And batch edit means if I choose multiple bones and key, they all get keyed together. So that is all that. For bake and recording, that's for, I've shown before that I do this animation by basically puppeteering the hips. Let's see if I can, that should be on this bone, it is, yeah. So if I delete this layer, and I'm going to puppeteer. So this tells it how frequently it should be capturing keyframes. So is it sampling 5 times a second, 20 times a second, 60 frames a second? I tend to go like lowish so I can edit the keys comfortably. Maybe go lower still, 5. The timer is the countdown timer. And cleanup keys means I think it does like a bit of it tries to smooth out keys it doesn't need. Double puppeteer, I'm not sure. Local world, I'm not sure. I tend to just go straight ahead. So now that I've got that set up, what I should be able to do is I can press the record button down here because we're onto the bottom toolbar now. I'll get a countdown timer. 3, 2, and if I want to cancel it, you can press it again and that'll cancel the recording, which is quite handy. But let's go back into recording again. So I'm going to record. It's going to give me a countdown timer. I'm ready to go. And I'm going to start to move it around. So I'm just puppeteering with my pencil like that. And then when it's done, I get a bunch of keys and now I can play it back. So this is snapping on the keys. I'm going to turn off. Going to get to the keyframe, the curve editor next, because we're now onto the next part of the UI because I've covered everything in the advanced menu, I believe. Yes. Okay. So curve editor. So this button down here brings up the curve editor. If I go to the rotation keys, you can see all the keys that I've recorded. If I temporarily turn off the tangents for a sec, I'll explain the rest of the UI. You can see that this is put in sort of like flat tangents for everything so that you can sort of see the keys clearly. A quick way to fix it is to go to the interpolation menu up here and tap auto tangents and it will auto smooth them all together. Once you've done it, I tend to turn it off so that otherwise it keeps trying to auto smooth things when I don't want it to. So now if I play back, you see that's the performance that I did. So that's pretty cool. So I'll explain more about the curve editor in a sec, but that's what that button does. It brings up the curve editor. This next button here sets a keyframe at the current time. So if I wanted to adjust this particular value, I'm going to snap to integer again. I'm going to snap to that key and I'm going to move that a little bit. So I want it to go up there. And so normally if I just move time, that change won't be recorded. But if I move it and then press the keyframe button, that's now stored. So that'll go up and down, which is what I want. This is the recording button, which I've talked about before. And then the others are pretty straightforward. So this goes to the first frame, that goes this button here goes to the last frame. The one in the middle, of course, plays animation. These two buttons set the start and end of the frame range. So if I want to just focus on a smaller section, say frames 20 to frames 100, I can do that. So now I'm just focusing on that small section of the animation. This stopwatch icon controls the speed of the playback. So 1 is default speed. If I go down to 0.5, I'm going to be playing at half speed. This can be quite handy when you're puppeteering. So you can slow it down, and then when you like it, you can speed it back up again. Bring it back up to 1. This says if it will loop or not. So when it's turned on, it'll loop. When it's turned off, it won't. And this last button is the animation clips. I tend to not use that too much just yet, so I might make another tutorial about that. That is, whoa, so advanced menu I've talked about. And then last, we've got the curve editor. 28 minutes, nearly there. So the curve editor. If I bring up the curve editor again, you can see these are all the keys. I'll just go through the buttons quickly. So this top button up here hides this sidebar. This button lets you lock how you can interact with keys. So normally if I just drag on a key, I can move it around in both time and value, or I can say to lock the time. So now I can only drag it up and down. I can't move it left or right, or I can go the other way. So I can lock the value. So now I can't move it up and down. I can only drag it left and right in time. Can you lock both? You can. That's interesting. I don't know why I need it, but there it is. Then we've got these next values here show the current time properties. So the first number is the current time. The second value is the current value. This button here brings up the interpolation options. I tend to use Bezier for most things. The tangent unify, right, so that's where if you have, so if I turn on the handles again, I'll get to this shortly. So you can see here I've got these handles, and these are handles are broken by default, which I tend to prefer. If you want, you can go tangent unify, and that should reset that. Yeah, once I edit it. Tends now supports weight. So if you drag handles further away, they have more effect. If you pull them in close, they have less effect. And I talked about the enable auto tangent before. I think I tend to only use it once as a snapshot, and then I turn it off straight away. This button zooms the entire frame range to the view. We have extra abilities for zooming the frame range, where if you drag up and down here where the numbers are displayed, or if you drag left and right here where the time is displayed, you can do nonlinear time scaling. So I can make it wider and shorter, or I can make it taller or shorter. Yeah, wider, thinner, short, taller. That's right. So that was the nonlinear scale. You can switch between the different display modes through here. You can also choose to hide and show certain things and to lock channels, which is quite useful. And then if you have morph targets, they will display down here under blend shapes. So maybe just the last thing, I will show that. Go over to here, open my morph. Sure. Choose him and go to the curve editor and go to blend shapes, and you can see they're all displayed here. So that, I think, is all of the UI. Well, the last thing to show is maybe just the standard kind of view thing up here in the corner. So if you want to sort of quickly snap to a view, you can tap on the axes and it will take you there. I think you can also drag on it as well. Just note that when you do it, it doesn't go into orthographic by default. So you have to make sure to go to ortho and then reset the view again. I think that's it. Watch for more tutorials about more specific things. 31 minutes, not too bad. Way.